are, Leadership and Other Stuff, my podcast. I'm sorry, I'm a little slow on this podcast. I should have done it earlier, but it is what it is. You know, life gets so busy. I say that a little bit sarcastically because, to be honest, my life used to be a whole lot busier than it is now. But I want to talk about this. The leadership things they never told you. Do you know there are some things that you can learn in a textbook? There are some things you can learn in a college. There are some things you can learn through a mentor. But there are other things you only learn on the job when you're under the pressure and the stress and the everyday challenges of leadership. And so that's how it is. That's how it is. At times, you just have to adjust and adapt on the job. And the first thing, leadership things they never told you, is the pressure to tolerate. You see, that does come at you. Something you feel strongly, something you have in your heart, something that you know that is wrong, maybe needs to change, but the overwhelming majority of people have a different view. Maybe they have a different view because of how it affects them. And that's a very relevant thing to think about. But it can wear you down. You're under pressure, you're under stress, it's coming at you on every side. Leadership does not come without pressures and challenges and choices. And so you can end up getting so worn down that you tolerate. And so you feel it strongly, but it's not worth the fight. That's what happens when you allow yourself to become worn down. I can think in particular of a specific occasion where in our college, I was in a committee room full of people, and I felt something strongly about interviews that the students had to partake in. I felt like they were invasive and that they were inappropriate. Well, the whole room disagreed with me. And in that room, there were, the key senior people in the college and even psychologists and all sorts of people. And they all had their own views and they brought their views strongly. I was a lone wolf. I was by myself. And so what did I do? Because I was maybe under pressure and stress, rather than stand by my conviction, I tolerated it. And the enemy will use that. The enemy will use that for you. By the way, ultimately, that came back to bite because those interviews came under a great deal of scrutiny and ultimately caused a whole lot of pain. So you have to follow your own conviction. You're the leader. No one else can do what you are called to do. And yes, we need counsel. We need a multitude of counsel, the Bible says. We need mentors, we need voices, we need people who speak into our lives. But some decisions only you can make. And I think sometimes we tolerate because, maybe you feel like someone is irreplaceable. Maybe you feel like you have to accommodate them. But I look back now and I wish there were people that I tolerated and thoughts and opinions that I tolerated and things that I ultimately, even though I made my thoughts clear, tolerated, and I never should have tolerated them because what you reap, you sow. And these things, God gives you a word, or you just feel it deep down in your spirit, or maybe you're intuitive and you know things and you sense things. You're the leader. Be the leader. Don't allow yourself to be bullied into tolerating. You have to back your own judgment. And in that, no one is irreplaceable on your team. They may feel like they are. You might feel like they are. And I certainly, in my team, had incredible people around me, and there were some people I just felt like I couldn't do without. And maybe because of that, I would back down and tolerate things I should never have tolerated. And in many ways, that became my undoing. And so leadership's not just the mistakes you make, it's also the things you tolerate. And number two, Here we go. The loneliness of tough decisions. I mean, it touches on the same things, but there are some decisions that you, as the leader, only you can make. You can try to defer it to others, but it's your decision. You're the chosen one. And maybe other people don't even understand. People don't like change, for example. And so change will always get resistance. That's why you have to take people on the journey. But leadership can be lonely. I go straight to Jesus in Gethsemane. I remember once an old pastor in Australia when I was younger and we were flying and everything was happening and, there was lots of momentum. And so around Australia and the church world, people knew about everything that was going on at Hillsong. I remember an old pastor saying, Brian hasn't had his Gethsemane experience yet. And of course, because I look at the cross through the prism of the resurrection, I'm like, well, why do I need a Gethsemane experience? And, that was just sort of young, brash me. But Gethsemane for Jesus was a very lonely place. He had to make a decision no one else could make. That's right. No one else could make. We used to sing an old song, lest I forget Gethsemane, lest I forget thine agony, lest I forget your love for me. I think it was Jesus lead me to Calvary. And so that's the facts of leadership. It can be lonely. You get in a quiet place and you have to make a decision. And if people don't understand it, you have to stand by it. These are the things about leadership that they never told you. Number 3, and this won't be long, the courage to follow your instinct. All of these things kind of flow together. Follow your instinct, follow your discernment, follow your convictions. Again, you are the leader. Be the leader. And if you're the boss, remember, they work for you. You don't work for them. And I think that's really worth thinking about. You see, discernment's powerful. It's a spiritual thing. It's not just a natural intuition. It's a spiritual thing. And God gives that to leaders. And so in that place, maybe you can see what other people can't see. Maybe you can feel what other people can't feel. It's amazing how as a leader you can see what other people just can't see. I've often told the story of where my office was on the top of a 4-story building. I would often go down to my car by going down the fire escape. And I was going down that fire escape one day and I saw this sort of activity in a crevice of the wall. It was like obviously a firewall, so blocks of concrete. But there was, I don't know how you describe it, little webs and just little things that didn't look normal. And so I asked more questions. Sure enough, there were termites. A lot of people walk up and down those stairs. No one else noticed the termites. I'm not saying, look at me, I'm awesome. What I am saying is, often, as a leader, you have an eye to see what other people can't see. Along the same lines, I'd go out, I'd, walk through the property, and oftentimes there was a weed as high as my knees. And so I'd go and I'd pull the weed out because we always love to have beautiful gardens. But I'd think to myself, why don't anyone else see that weed? We have maintenance people. We had a whole maintenance team. And they were great, by the way. I'm not putting them down. But leadership, you have an eye that God gives you. You have discernment. And you have to back that. You have to support that. And you have to make the lonely decisions that only you can make. The Bible says, each man will follow his own interests, but a faithful man who can find. and just human nature. Everyone has vested interests. And yes, people do die for them, for the greater cause, and thank God for that. But sometimes people's vested interests will resist change and resist decisions that they feel don't suit them. You have to follow your gut. You have to be strong, and you have to make those lonely decisions that only you can make. Number 3, again, these things flow along. The courage to follow your instinct, discernment, and convictions. Leadership is, you can see what maybe other people can't see. Often, that's your choice of people. You see, as the leader, you'll find that often you can see the gold in someone that no one else can see. That's a powerful, powerful thing. Because when we look at Hillsong and we look at the impact it had around the globe, I thank God that I followed my instinct, and often something I could see in people, maybe the skill level was still not where it could have been, and maybe everyone else will say they're not ready. I've never, ever been ready for any new opportunity I ever received in leadership. You're never ready. That's why it's a walk of faith. You have to step out. See the gold that other people can't see. Back your judgment again and trust people. I've learned that if you believe in people, they'll go to the end of the world for you. They just need to know that they believe in, that you believe in them. And even if that sometimes comes in the midst of you challenging them, stretching them, confronting them, they know that you love them and that you're for them. And like I say, they'll go to the end of the earth for you. But see the golden people. Have the courage to step out. And when other people can't see, I know when it came to leadership generally and the future of Hillsong, people there quick to have their opinions. Well, these people weren't ready. They just weren't ready. You're never ready. You're never ready. You see the gold in people. And frankly, oftentimes moving forward, that gold comes out. Maybe a great opportunity was lost. Number 4, things about leadership they don't tell you. And number 4 is the grief of broken relationships. But we were blessed in our ministry, 40 years at Hillsong, and many of our senior team, our department heads, in fact, by many I mean like 95%, they didn't just stay with Bobby and I for 5 years, 10 years, a matter of years. They stayed with us for decades, which also says something about the health of the church and reality compared with whatever the narratives might be. People don't stay with you that long. If it's a dreadful place to work or if it's a toxic environment, it was a beautiful, unified, healthy environment for a long, long time. But having said that, maybe over a whole lifetime of leadership, you're going to have 2 or 3 high-profile relationships that break down. And I've got to tell you, that's not easy. In fact, it can bring real grief into your life. I learned that our church went 12 years. We had no real challenges. No, people come and go from church and you have your normal things, but big picture, nothing like this. So we started in 1983, 1995. We had a big upset, which didn't involve a whole lot of people, but they were very key and significant people. And in that, we didn't just lose staff members, we lost friends. And I mean, I went through grief over that. And maybe people don't understand that. But you love the people that you work with. They mean a whole lot more to you than whatever their skill brings to the job. They mean a whole lot more than that, and it can hurt. And I've got a lot to say these days about whether your friends should be on staff. I guess I always felt like, we're relational. So many of my very best friends in life were on staff. Now, I'm not sure it's a good idea to have your best friends as staff members, but what I do know is that there will be, along the way, hiccups, and there will be grief of broken relationships, maybe not on staff or team, but maybe within the church as a whole. And those things are painful, and you have to carry it by yourself. I've never been through the grief, and by God's grace, I pray that I never will, of the grief of someone apart from maybe old people in our family, dying. I've never, by God's grace, had to go through that. And so that kind of grief I just can't even fathom. I can't even imagine. But I do know the grief of a broken down relationship. And even though, like I say, they are the minority, certainly not the majority, it's hurtful. And it's a challenge in leadership. And it can be so discouraging. And so give that some thought. I remember, again, way back, before the year 2000, going through a situation in church and losing someone who I thought was irreplaceable. And I can remember lying, we were supposed to be on holiday, on vacation. I remember lying in the bed with my eyes wide open, stressing, freaking out about the next Hillsong conference and how we were going to do it because we had lost someone significant. And it turns out that conference was the greatest we'd ever had. And from there, Hillsong Conference just went from strength to strength to strength to become the largest annual conference of any kind in Australia. And it stayed like that for many, many, many years. It's a real thing, though. Just the grief of broken relationship. Let's believe there won't be too many of them. And if you lead with wisdom, you lead with authority, you lead with grace and love, there won't be too many of them. But oftentimes people's hearts change, and it can be not only, significant in terms of the ministry, but it can be very painful personally. And so these are some of the things they don't necessarily tell you about leadership when you're walking that leadership journey out. The fifth thing is the open wounds of criticism. No one likes to be criticized. Everyone wants to be loved. I think probably for many years I was too much of a people pleaser. Not everyone maybe would think that, but it's a fact. And so criticism always hurts. When we started getting criticized, not just for a year or two, but over a long period of time, maybe 25 years. The church was flying, everything kept growing, and the criticism from the media, from the press, from social media, from so many, it was coming against us. Thank God it never slowed down what God was doing. But it doesn't mean that personally it doesn't hurt. It doesn't mean that the unfairness of it often, the misrepresentations in it, the falsehood in it. People say crazy things. I get trolls. Everyone gets trolls, I guess, especially if you're doing something significant. But even just this week, I saw a message where someone was attacking me and talking about money and says that we were paying our kids from the church funds overseas to fund their lifestyles. That's just a complete lie. Absolute nonsense. But why am I telling you? Because obviously it's still there. It's still in my mind. And just, again, human nature that you can have 99% of people say something positive to you, but somehow it's the 1%, that one thing that sticks in your craw and that eats away at you, and you have to get good at accepting criticism. Two things that'll destroy people if you let them. One's accolades, getting seduced by accolades. I'll talk about that. The other one is criticism. So over the years, I had to learn how to become hardened to criticism. Just don't focus on it. Just don't keep looking at it. When it came to the media, I just didn't look at stuff. I still don't. I just don't look at stuff. I don't know what. And so when people start telling me, oh, what did you think about this? Or what did you think about what that person said? I'm like, I don't know anything about it. That's a good way to live. I remember Joel Osteen saying, he just thinks that everybody loves him. And so, well, it's no secret Joel gets attacked only for one reason, and that's because he's such a mighty man of God, because God's blessed him in such a massive way. And so you'll always have the underbelly who are going to try to pull you down and attack you. And it's always worse, by the way, when it comes from Christians than when it comes from the world. And sadly, that's often where it comes from. Just people who are small-spirited, small-minded, maybe jealous of your success. You have to be good at criticism. I think it's always good to listen to criticism, to think about whether maybe there's some validity in it. But at the end of the day, you either got to change or you got to dismiss it. It can't rule you. If it rules you, it'll diminish you, because you'll make all your decisions fearful of what people are going to say. And that means nothing about you is going to stand out anymore. You're going to be just like everybody else. Influence never, ever comes from just being big. Influence comes by doing what's never been done before. And I will tell you now, when you start doing what's never done before, there'll be criticism. I've got a young guy, he's in his 40s now, but he's kind of looked to me as his leader, even as his pastor, and he feels like God's led him in a direction that people just don't understand, so it's got criticized. And he's been hurt by it. But the fact is, God spoke to him. He didn't speak to everybody else. So the only thing he can do is live by the conviction. And we rise and fall according to the choices and decisions we make. And if he believes that's God's will for his life, God's going to bless it and grace it. And it'll end up being very powerful. You know, just a week or two ago, maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, there's a very, very influential podcaster type, media presence type political person in Australia. And she just said straight out, Brian Houston tried to cover up his father's pedophilia. Well, I went through a 3.5-week trial with evidence after evidence after evidence that said that didn't happen. The judge said, I find these actions the exact opposite to a cover-up, my actions, the exact opposite to a cover-up. I'm sure I could probably sue her. But these things will come. People will say mean things. People will say nasty things. I've never done it. I've only ever done this once, but I remember one time, you know, I've had to block a lot of people over the years on social media. And I remember one time sort of getting into the people that I blocked, and one of the first names that came up was Ricky Gervais. And so I'm like, no, it can't be. But sure enough, it was actually Ricky Gervais, who on social media had attacked me and criticised me, and I had blocked him. Well, I look at that because I think it's kind of funny, but the reality is criticism is a part of the journey. And if you can't handle it, you're in the wrong game. It's as simple as that. I mean, Jesus, he had the Sanhedrin coming against him. He had the Pharisees coming against him. Ultimately, the Romans who crucified him. I mean, he had them all coming against him. Why? Because he was making waves that nobody before or since have ever made. And he was making a difference. If you're making a difference, you have to learn to rise above criticism. Otherwise, it will inhibit you and it will limit you. I can think of one friend who, quite frankly, he was like before his time in his nation. It wasn't Australia, but in his nation, he was before his time. God started blessing him, had massive momentum, but his message, which was a powerful message, came under attack. And so I saw him kind of modify the message a little bit. And I just don't necessarily think he should have ever done that because God puts it in your heart, then you live by it and you stand by it, and whether other people understand or not, that's the loneliness of leadership. Number 6, leadership is the battle of your mind. I wake up some days on top of my thoughts. I wake up other days with my thoughts on top of me. And so everything seems worse in the night time. And, even David, the Bible talks about night seasons and how God directed him in the night seasons. And there is something about the night time where everything seems worse. Anxiety grows. Oftentimes things get even larger than they really are in your head and in your mind. That little scripture about renewing your mind, not being conformed to this world, but transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. It's a much more powerful scripture than maybe you realize. It wasn't just a verse with a throwaway thought. No, it's so powerful because a leader, you're going to have to constantly renew your mind. And the battle of the mind is a very real thing. In the Bible, the way it points, the New Testament, the way it points to the mind as a battlefield is a very, very real thing. And you have to win the battle of your own mind. Otherwise, it'll bring you down. The cause for negative thought comes at you with rapid speed. But you're called to be an overcomer. You're called to victory. You're called to be a winner. And that can only come when you decide that you're going to live by the renewal of your mind, not allowing thoughts that you wake up with that are completely on top of you, not to allow them to rule you. The thing about worry is so much of it never, ever comes to pass, but you can worry things into existence. Win the battle of your mind and you'll win the battle of leadership. Yeah. Number 7, this is the last one. The tensions of friendship. Look, I talked about this. Friends on staff. It's a good idea or a bad idea. I remember being asked that in Bible college. 1972, 1973, 1974. I'm in Bible college. And that was kind of a debate that we were having in the classroom. Should you have? And I always believed, yes. I'm a very relational person, believe it or not. And so, yeah, my best friends in life were nearly all on my team and on my staff. There are people who you think are your friends, and they will act and conduct themselves like they're your friends, but it will only ultimately be tested when it's tested. And it's a very sad lesson to learn when you realize that oftentimes you're the boss, they're an employee, that it was entirely transactional. When you were the source of their supply, the source of maybe opportunity, promotion, all of those things, it's amazing how people feel like your friends. It's also amazing when all of a sudden you're no longer the source of their opportunity, that the surfaceness of those friendships are very evident. So what do I feel now? I feel like we should love our team, love our staff, be with our staff, socialize with our team. I think all those things can only build team unity and spirit. But don't believe that everyone's your friend when you're actually their boss, because there's a vested interest. And sadly, it can lead to great disappointment. Look, I only gave you 7. I could probably give you 27 things about leadership that they never teach you. But there's just 7 things for you to ponder and to think about. They're my feelings, my opinions. You're welcome to give me feedback and tell me what you think about it. But at the end of the day, you're the leader. God graced you. He anointed you. He appointed you. Be the leader. And along the way, you learn a lot of leadership lessons that they just can't teach you in college or business school or theology classes. They just can't teach you. You have to learn them on the job. That's why it's good to listen to fathers. That's why it's good to listen to people who may be a little further down the road, because they have wisdom that comes out of experience. They have wisdom that comes from, well, getting their hands dirty. Leadership speaking. God bless. Thanks for joining me. See you next time. Leadership and other stuff.